Hello, everyone. Thanks for jumping online and joining us for this virtual version of the School Safety Community Forum from the Roaring Fork Schools. My name is Anna Cole, and I'm the Chief of Student Family Services in the district and also our interim superintendent. Really grateful you all are here to learn a little bit more about what we're doing in terms of school safety, and we're looking forward to receiving your feedback about the work we're doing. This presentation is part of a series of community forums that we conducted the week of 26th of February. We moved from each of our communities, Carbondale, Glenwood Springs, and Basalt, to share this information, talk to stakeholders, and then get some feedback. And at each of the presentations, we were joined by some of our partners. We had our chiefs of police from all of our law enforcement agencies, as well as our school resource officers. We also had Hope Center staff be as co-presenters. And so we'll talk a little bit about their work as we go through the slide deck today. The purpose of this work in the community forums is to really come together as a community in lieu of kind of the changing dynamics around school safety and risks and threats to our community and to our kids, to really take stock of what we're doing as the Roaring Fork Schools in terms of school safety, and to get feedback, to make sure our priorities are on point with our community, to make sure that we're investing appropriately in the kinds of strategies that make sense from an evidence-based approach, as well as are responsive to our community, and to really take that information and then come back together with a community vision of school safety. So what we're going to talk through is some of our existing safety strategies. We'll talk about some of our current data that we look at in terms of student safety and well-being. We'll talk about some of the risks. We'll share some of the assessments that our internal and external partners provided. And then by also sharing links to some additional information sheets online, you'll be able to really go deep into some of our current strategies. And then by using an online Google form, provide feedback for us about recommended next steps, your priorities, and different investments and ways we should strengthen the strategies that we're using. So we really started these conversations asking a pretty personal question and having people talk about that, of what makes you feel safe and unsafe at schools. And the answers that we heard in our forums were as diverse as our community. So we heard everything from safe entrances and exits, to trusted relationships with staff, to the visibility of administrators or school resource officers. We heard about all those different sorts of approaches and strategies that really contribute to safe schools. We will link on our website a key document that's kind of our 5 pillars guide to school safety strategies. This is aligned to national standards, and the 5 pillars are prevention, mitigation, protection, response, and recovery. We do a number of things that we, as a matter of practice, as investments. There's a number of tools we use within each of these pillars to help contribute and create safe environments at schools. But the purpose of this forum is to really highlight a couple of strategies that we need more input on, either because we feel like we're falling short of best practices, or because in order to sustain current practices, we need to make additional investments, or for other reasons of just really needing more community input. We've highlighted and would like to surface a couple of strategies, the 5 that you see highlighted here: school culture, facilities, school resource officer partnerships, school-based mental and behavioral health, and then communication with families in moments of crisis. So some of the data that we're tracking and that we watch and are paying attention to in terms of safety are certainly related to attendance and behavior, and then students' impressions of school safety. In terms of attendance, and any family who's been with us the last 2 years knows that our attendance practices have tightened up in the 23-24 school year. We really leaned in, wanting to push and get our attendance rates closer to where they were pre-COVID. We were seeing, prior to 2020, attendance rates really around 95 to 96% of attendance for all students. Our rate in 22-23 was about 90%. Already in 23-24, we're up, back, trending in the right direction at about 93.5%, but we'd like to push that further. We know that a big component of safety is having kids consistently, presently in class, following routines, getting to engage and connect with their classmates and their teachers, and attendance is really the foundation of that. We also track behavior and look at how student incidents are impacting school safety. And we're seeing a reduction in kind of the types of incidences that would lead to out of school suspensions, but we're seeing, which is great, but we're also seeing an increase in the total number of incidences this year over last. So we're tracking that, paying attention to that, and trying to better understand why that's happening and how we can better support our students. Our students also participate in a number of student surveys. Every year, they take the Panorama Student Survey in December, and that survey asks them a number of questions, but what we really pay attention to in terms of safety is the belonging data. And for our grades 3 to 5 in the December 2023 Panorama School Survey, questions around belonging for our elementary school students indicate that students have a really strong sense of belonging in our schools. We ranked as a district in the top 10% of all districts nationwide for positive feelings of belonging from our kids. And then at the secondary level, we similarly see strong outcomes there and around belonging, and ranked in the top 30% of all districts nationwide. Additionally, every 2 years, our secondary students take the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, and there's an explicit question on there about school safety. And in the 2023 Healthy Kids Colorado survey, over 93% of our secondary students reported feeling usually or always safe at school. Those are great. That's great data. Those are great indicators. But we also feel like, and we're aware of, and anybody, again, who's been with us in the last 2 years is aware of incidences happening across our valley that have impacted our schools and shaken our sense of safety. I think we've had some real and not real false alarms around swatting incidences, threats to external folks threatening violence against our schools that have led to both lockdowns and schools being put insecure or being put into lockdown, which is very, I think, that's a really hard experience for kids and staff to go through a lockdown. Even a drill is a pretty intense experience. So we're feeling those external threats as a community, and it really feels like this is the right moment for us to take stock of what we're doing and make sure that we're doing everything reasonably possible to keep our schools safe. So at our forums, we had a couple of guest speakers. Last year, the Roaring Fork Schools made the determination to prioritize hiring an internal school safety and security coordinator. Dustin Gehring joined our team with a strong background both in law enforcement and education and in school safety evaluations. So he's been a real asset to our team. We also heard from Town of Carbondale, Town of Basalt, and City of Glenwood Springs chiefs of police and school resource officers. And then we heard from various providers from the Aspen Hope Center about student social emotional well-being. And what we really heard from our experts was they highlighted strengths in our district that they notice, and really all three highlighted the strength of relationships, school culture and climate between kids and trusted adults in schools. They really highlighted the partnerships that we have as the Roaring Fork Schools with law enforcement, with organizations like Aspen Hope Center, both in terms of providing school-based mental health services and crisis services, crisis response. When kids are in crisis and we're concerned about their threat to themselves for harm or threat to others. And then they also really highlighted the procedures and drills that we're strengthening through Dustin's leadership and the safety and security coordinator. The gaps that our partners really shared in areas we need to strengthen, certainly Dustin Gehring from the school safety and security lens and our law enforcement partners all highlighted concerns around our high school open campuses, where kids are moving kind of freely in and out during the school day. And they just really named how hard it is as a law enforcement partner to know who's in the building and what's going on in school, and how to support kids and families, knowing who's there, who belongs in school when the doors are open and kids are coming and going. They also named, in 2015, our bond issue helped us make sure that every school has a safe and secure entrance, which many of you are familiar with, where there's a vestibule with a buzzer that folks need to be screened in. And both law enforcement and Dustin Gehring really elevated concerns around our consistent use of those safe and secure entrances. And they also raised concerns about doors that are propped and left open during the school day, and those kinds of practices that make us vulnerable to having people moving in and out of the school that we are not aware of. And then finally, certainly our Aspen Hope Center providers spoke to the strengths of relationships and access to school-based mental health, but raised concerns about sustainable funding streams for school-based mental health. So then where we shift, and I think part of this is going to be kind of homework if you're joining us virtually to click over and access some additional resources. We've highlighted a couple of strategies where we want to provide you more information and get your feedback on these strategies. And so what you'll find online is an additional resource with information sheets about these 5 strategies. In the information sheets, you'll see information both about our current practices and best practices and the distance between those two. You'll see information about cost for some of these services and investments that we'll need to make to sustain these partnerships. And you'll see other information just about the strategy and how we're currently working with it and some of the concerns we have. And so what you're going to see is there's a sheet about school culture and climate, our investment in positions called Deans of Culture, who are administrators that really are student-facing administrators who work to strengthen school culture, to address behavior responsively, and really help support our students in that culture and climate world. You'll see information about parent communications, especially during our crisis procedures. We're curious here as to, is that working? Are you receiving those communications during when our schools are having following crisis protocols, and how can we strengthen parent communications? You'll also see an information sheet on school-based mental health. You'll see the really dynamic blended funding that supports our initiative to have a school-based mental or behavioral health provider in every school. We receive funding from the town of Carbondale, the town of Basalt, the city of Glenwood Springs, and Eagle County to sustain those positions, which altogether cost over $1 million a year. They're also funded by a Colorado Department of Education grant and by the school district. But because of pressures to those funding streams, we're anticipating over a $200,000 deficit in that program next year because of the instability of the funding sources. And so really need to hear from our community what level of prioritization you have around school-based mental health, certainly around school culture and certainly around our school resource officer partnerships. But you'll see all that information in the info sheets around school-based mental health. You'll also see an information sheet about secure entrances, open and closed campuses, and some of the best practices and our current practices. A lot of the infrastructure we've already invested in here, so there's not a ton of costs around secure entrances, but there's certainly cultural shifts that we'll have to make to be able to hit and nail best practices on secure entrances. So looking for feedback there on willingness, on concerns about entrances, and open and closed campuses. And then finally, you'll see information excuse me, about the robust partnerships we have with all of our cities and towns and Garfield County to staff a school resource officer, or to make sure that there's a school resource officer available to every school. Currently, we pay, as the Roaring Fork Schools, 25% of 4 school resource officer positions. There's pressure to increase that investment so that our town law enforcement agencies don't have to carry that cost. That's a lot of money. We also need input from our community because any sort of investment excuse me, that we make towards school resource officers, towards school-based mental health is going to come out of our K-12 funding budget. We don't currently have additional grants we can tap into for that, and we really need some sustainable funding streams to support these kinds of roles. And so we're really looking for feedback from our community on where are your priorities, where is it appropriate for us to reallocate funding from K-12 education to these sorts of partnerships that really help us strengthen safety and security for our students, staff, and families. So please jump over to those information sheets. There should be a link on our website. There's also a link to a Google form where you can provide feedback on these strategies, share your concerns, share your questions, share your recommendations and priorities about them. What we'll do next is we've gathered a lot of information from our in-person community forums. We are continuing to host forums with special groups. We need to do some targeted outreach to our staff, to our students to get their input. This work will continue. This website will be open and accessible over the next month, and we'll start to pull all that feedback together. And then in careful reflection and partnership with our Hope Center partners, our law enforcement partners, our town and city councils and county commissioners, because in particular, Eagle County also supports school-based mental health. We don't currently receive any support from Pitkin or Garfield counties with that work. But with those partners, we'll talk about what we've learned and where we'd like to head in terms of continued partnership on these strategies. And a lot of that will be really informed by our school leaders, who will be reviewing and analyzing all this data with us to identify where we go next. You will be informed of what we're learning and what we're thinking about, where we're going to shift practices and strengthen and make investments for the 24-25 school year over the course of this spring and summer, through our usual communication pathways, including our family newsletters that come out every 2 weeks or so, our website, and keep an eye out for the superintendent columns in the Post Independent that come out once a month, is where we'll be sharing information on where we go next. Really grateful for your time and investment in this work. Here we have kind of Dustin Gehring, who's our safety and security coordinator's contact information. If you have specific questions, feel free to reach out to Dustin. And we're just so grateful for your investment and interest in this work. Please, I encourage you to really dig through the information sheets on the strategies where we're looking for your input and share that information with us. We thank you so much for your collaboration and engagement, and look forward to really strengthening our safety and security procedures based on your feedback. Thanks so much.